Trump took part in America Reads the Bible, and the passage that he read ends with the tragic destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, a situation that we see today.
And this house which is high shall be an astonishment to every one that passes by it, so that he shall say, why has the Lord done thus to this land and to this house?
But that's not the end of the story. The passage also speaks of the restoration that is possible when Jews return to pray on the Temple Mount.
Now my eyes shall be open and my ears attent to the prayer that is made in this place. For now I have chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever, and my eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually.
We are returning, we are praying, and we will build the third temple. Follow my channel, and I'll see you in the next update.
Europe is set to begin energy lockdowns in the next few weeks. A few weeks ago, Russia actually predicted this. They said that Europe was about to impose these restrictions, and now here we are. According to multiple reports, here you go, Financial Times, Brussels pushes remote working to ease energy crisis. Sounds fun, and they put a cat in the photo. Like, you'll be home with your cat, so no big deal. She's got a big fluffy
Look
cat.
how happy she is there.
She's so happy to be with her cat.
Does she have a warm beverage too?
She's got a nice little plant and a
man,
cat.
I want to work there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to work there too.
Now all you need is like a puppy or like a nice warm bed. So the EU is pushing remote work now to tackle energy crisis. Brussels wants to start by introducing one mandatory work day from home per week as these energy prices continue and keep rising. Ursula von der Leyen just a few days ago already was laying the groundwork for this. Listen.
Is how can we reduce the demand? Because, of course, the least expensive energy is the energy that is not used. We should reduce demand while...
Yeah, we should reduce demand. Of course, Jim Ferguson joins us now from the UK. He has been watching this very, very closely. Jim, of course, is the founder of Freedom Train International and one of the keenest observers of this globalist tyranny that's unfolding. Jim, great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks a lot, Clayton. It's always good to be on with you and Natalie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure. Well, you might, next time we see you, have to be working from home, so we wouldn't have a chance to have you in a studio because of these new laws. But, you know, I think any idiot could have looked at this and seen that this was going to come from the EU, from Europe, that these energy restrictions were going to start flowing, and here we are. What do you think, just broadly, at a big picture level, of what this is going to mean for the people of Europe?
Well, from a strategic viewpoint, the pressures on the supplies are quite critical. We've been hearing about jet fuel running out in Europe in the next 6 weeks, and that was reported a week or so ago. I wrote an article about 3 weeks ago on the potential for energy lockdowns. I think really, if you want to take it from a strategic viewpoint, it's this. When governments start trying to manage demand, it tells you everything, because it basically means if they're managing demand, it's because they're unsure about managing the supply. And that's going to affect things on a massive scale, not just in Europe. It's already impacting truckers and farmers in Australia, with food prices due to rise probably within the next 3 weeks by about 20 to 30%. Hard-pressed families are already feeling the struggle already. So when that happens, because farmers use so much diesel to get the crops to market, to harvest them, and then the trucks have to supply them, that is going to put critical pressure on those supply chains. And there are warnings now that there could be food shortages as well. Indeed, I went into the local supermarket there just a couple of days ago, and I started to see shelves that were starting to empty. Now, what people don't always realize is that the tins of beans and soups and other things that are canned products are usually from last year's harvest, which means it takes that length of time to get them out and developed and produced and into market and into the shops. What could happen is it will most likely put up food prices dramatically, but it could cause real shortages. But the following year is when we might see it really escalating if they don't sort out this mess in the Straits of Hormuz and free up that international global shipping routes. The pressure's on. But from a globalist point of view, they're loving it because it gives them greater control. they will most likely start to introduce fear. Now, nothing at the moment is legal. It's not mandatory yet, but we saw what happened during the COVID era.
Right.
It started off with that easy sell, safe and effective. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't see that happening, where there will be increased taxes, fines for people that go out in their cars. If they want to go to the seaside or out from around the country, your neighbours are going to be picking up the phone and reporting you for it. That's just where it's going. And it's very, very deeply concerning.
Right. If you read this Financial Times article, it says these are recommendations. They're just incentivizing you to make your employees stay home once a week or, use renewables and things. It's just an incentive for now. But those of us who did live in Europe during the pandemic, remember, here's a crazy story. We were at in the little town of Bruges, we were at a Christmas lights walk. In Belgium, where you walk around the town and see the Christmas lights. And every half mile or so, we had to show our QR code that showed that we had a recent negative COVID test. And if we didn't, you cannot walk outside on this path to look at Christmas lights.
In the cold.
At night, outside, in the cold, we couldn't do it. We had to have recent negative COVID tests for an outdoor Christmas walk. These are the ways, and Europeans, they bend over for these kind of rules. Yes, sure, we'll do that. Here you go. The families were doing it. That's just the way it was. The structure is in place to enforce this, and Europeans will have no pushback, right?
Absolutely right, Natalie. And I remember those circumstances very well indeed, because it was happening all over the world at that point. And I believe this is going to go global as well. As I say, Australia is already feeling the pinch. There are farming communities in Asia that are desperate now for fuel. We saw Albanese, the leader of the Australian government there, the Prime Minister, going to Asian countries and then bragging about how he was able to get 1 million litres of diesel. But it got rubbish, because when people actually looked into the detail of the deal, 1 million litre or 100 million litres is only 1 day's supply. I think they use about 98 million litres per day in Australia. So, it's all sound bites. The reality is the pressure's on. If they cannot manage the demand, which is now what they're talking about by confining people to be at home mandatory for 1 day, for example, it's because they can't manage the supply. And Europe is energy poor. They just don't have the energy that they need. And of course, picking fights with Russia over Ukraine has harmed them greatly. The pipeline that was taking the gas, the fuel in that got blown up, of course, they felt the pinch there as well. One country that could be benefiting from all of this, of course, is the United States, because they do produce a lot of oil and a lot of gas. And President Trump has said, if you feel that you need it, buy it from us. But once again, we've seen reports just within the last 2-3 days of 200 tankers heading directly to the United States, some of them super tankers that can carry up to 2 million barrels of oil a day. But I think the real pressure is coming. And I mean, I'm planning to go back to Europe again, but I'm looking at the airline availability. We've seen KLM, a Dutch airline that I fly with a lot, going off to different countries, saying that they're grounding hundreds of flights. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think what the globalist mentality is, it's more lockdowns, it's more control, it's more fear. Yes. And that's something we've always got to be really careful about. And that's why I always really respect you guys on Redacted, because you're always at the forefront, at the cutting edge of getting the news out. And I think, as we always say in Freedom Train International, don't be scared, be prepared. We're telling our members now, get ready, accelerate your preparations, make sure that you're not going to be left without, because this could go a lot further. I don't think it's going to be over in a matter of days or weeks. I think it might go on a lot longer. And the tension in the Middle East right now is huge. So we could even see that situation escalating further.
People in the chat room are saying, yes, you're right. It's all about control. That's at the heart of this. And I've heard people say that this is really COVID 2.0. They can't get us again with a fake virus. They have to get us with something now. They're using the Iran war as a mechanism for control. And part of these pieces from Brussels, specifically, it mentions closing public buildings, making transit cheaper. So you're getting these subsidies for people to be taking public transit, because they certainly don't want you owning your own car. So when you start to see these pieces coming together, like car-free zones, car-free days, we're going to subsidize public transit. We want you to stay home. We want to move you away from cash. You're right. At the heart of it is control.
It is, and once again, we're starting to see that control and that fear, and we will see that ramped up, especially if they're going to start making it mandatory that people have to stay at home. But by crushing businesses, by causing people hardship, it produces fear, and that's what we saw during the pandemic and the lockdowns just a few short years ago. But the other important thing to remember is UN Agenda 2030.
Right.
Now, that is the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which on the surface appear very noble, but there's nothing noble about them. This is, once again, hardcore control tactics. The globalists are obsessed with controlling everybody else, and the year 2030 is not that far away. It is accelerating towards it, and I think we're going to see more of these types of scenarios where people are being controlled through the use of energy, through the use of fuel, and ultimately through the use of food. If you don't get your digital ID, you can't get into the supermarket. We see the credit score system in China that is now causing many people in China to be locked out of their own homes because they've said something, they've jaywalked, they've done something that the state doesn't like. And the globalists in Europe, in particular in the EU Commission, love the Chinese model because they want the same thing here in Europe.
Jeez, you're absolutely right about that. They are rolling out Agenda 2030 right now, and they're using
then you
this.
think about the high taxes that Europeans pay, thinking, well, we get free healthcare. Well, no, actually, because what you're paying for will be a more expensive government that works less. Because they're going to mean that your healthcare workers work from home too. They're going to mean that your Social Security office works from home. You're going to continue to pay these high taxes. You're going to get less and less and less for it. So middle finger, Europeans, as always. This is not an indictment of the European people. It is absolute sympathy for the government that imposes on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the European nations are great people. I know a lot of people across the whole of Europe, in particular in the East as well. I've spent a lot of time there over the course of the last few years. And they're wonderful people, but they're hard-pressed. And this is not going to help
it's
them.
Awful. Yeah, it won't.
It really is. Yeah. So I think that, once again, it's a question now of waiting to see whether that Straits of Hormuz get freed up, whether the oil prices come down. I think the globalists, though, have an agenda. Clayton mentioned it earlier. And absolutely right. And I think we just have to be very, very careful where we're going with this, but get prepared. Don't leave it to the last minute. I also watched you talking about gold and silver. You're absolutely 100% right about that as well, Clayton. People should be getting some of that too if they can afford to get some coins, in particular on the silver side.
Yeah, I agree with you on the prepping side right now. Make sure you have food stores in your house, because I think the thing you said at the very beginning was spot on, which is this is a trickle effect, that we might not see these shortages this summer, but the next harvest, when the fertilizers weren't there, when all of this was shut down, that next year's prices could be doubled or even tripled, or we won't have food at all. Jim Ferguson, great to see you as always. We know it's almost 10 p.m. there in the
U.S. amount of videos coming out right now, all pointing to the possibility of energy lockdowns. With what we're seeing in Iran, also different news stories coming out of Europe, stuff from Texas, and one of the craziest happening just yesterday on the 23rd in Australia. We'll start this off with a video that kind of lays the framework for all of this with the recent news that has come out from the International Energy Agency.
Listen up. Here comes the energy lockdowns. Fuel stations run out of diesel across Australia. Waiting for days, India feels impact of gas supply chain disruption. Vietnam braces for flight cuts from April after China and Thailand ban jet fuel exports. Iran war ignites African race to keep gas pumps flowing. And another article that we all need to be paying attention to, what soaring diesel costs amid war with Iran mean for meat, vegetable, and fruit prices. So why is there an energy lockdown coming? The IEA now wants alternating license plate restrictions, which means you will not be allowed to be on the roads on certain days. They're also talking about reducing all road speed limits everywhere, so that traveling by road is increasingly suffocating and slow. So let's go over their 10 recommended measures. Number 1, work from home. That sounds familiar. Number 2, reduce highway speed limits. Number 3, shift to public transport. Number 4, increasing carpooling. Number 5, adopt more efficient driving practices. Number 6, car-free Sundays or alternating license plate restrictions. Number 7, improve fleet efficiency. Number 8, avoid non-essential air travel. Number 9, switch to electric or modern cooking solutions. And number 10, leverage flexibility in petrochemical feedstocks. Welcome to the Great Reset. And yes, this was all planned. And I'm telling you, every world leader, every one of them is playing their part for this to happen.
The IEA chief basically said the shit is hitting the fan, everything's falling apart, and he just published Lockdowns 2.0, an energy lockdown playbook. They released a 10-point plan over the weekend telling governments to restrict driving, ground flights, force remote work, and ban gas cooking. They called it sheltering from oil shocks.
So on top of all of that, let's take a look at some of the news stories that are coming out from around the world that support what the International Energy Agency wants to do. This was posted on March 23rd. Slovenia becomes the first EU nation to enforce fuel rationing.
Queues are forming at fuel stations across Slovenia, with some locations reporting diesel shortages. Notices warn customers about limited availability of certain fuels.
The whole situation that is taking place in Iran could be feeding into setting up this whole energy lockdown. CNN, of course, is posting spook stories to make everyone believe the reason as to why the fuel prices are going up. Iran begins laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Sources say. Who's the source? Can we trust them? Of course, we can't trust CNN. We also have this report from Bloomberg. The Thai government will require most government agencies to adopt full work-from-home arrangements as part of emergency measures to curb energy demand. I've been saying this for years, and it's a real possibility that this will be the narrative that they move forward with into the future to gain control. It's extremely easy to manipulate the population using the climate. When you take nature and animals and wildlife into consideration, a vast majority of people will believe anything you tell them and adopt these restrictions and regulations because it's good for the climate, sources say. We have no good information in connection to who these sources are, and it's been proven that through the years, many of these climate scientists, as all the scientists do, will say whatever they think the people paying them want to be said so they get more funding. So be watchful of this in the future, because this climate thing and what we're seeing right now, energy lockdowns, is something that they can try to use to gain absolute control. Potentially in relation to all of this, Texas's largest oil refinery in Port Arthur had an explosion just yesterday on March 23rd. This is one of the largest facilities in the United States. The facility processes roughly 395,000 barrels of crude oil per day, making it a crucial piece of America's fuel supply chain. This happening at the same time that the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed, different things in Iraq and Qatar, all causing the fuel demands to be even higher, is setting up a perfect storm and something they may be relying on to implement forced actions such as energy lockdowns, which is the type of absolute insanity that is happening right now in Australia.
The state government's prepping for the worst case scenario, working out a potential fuel rationing scheme as unleaded petrol soars close to $3 a litre in Sydney. At least 42 stations have no fuel at all, and around 107 have now run out of diesel.
We're preparing for every eventuality, but I don't want to jump the gun. I think it's reasonable that we would be preparing for a prolonged conflict in the Middle East.
The Premier says his team's working on a contingency plan in case of emergency, urging drivers not to panic and exercise common sense.
Heartless criminals have started siphoning petrol out of cars parked on the street as the crime wave from the fuel crisis gets worse by the day. Now, the price of fruit and veggies across Sydney is skyrocketing as grocers try to cover their ballooning costs.
At the fruit and veg shop, the rising price of petrol leaving supply far from apples.
Rather than coming daily to the market, it's only coming maybe twice a week.
Pushing up prices, the worst produce transported from interstate, like broccoli and fennel.
Probably about 25% to 30% increases so far.
Impacting small business, food producer Elizabeth Hewson sources her ingredients interstate.
How long can I ride this out? And you don't really want to make a drastic change, like increase the price straight away.
Today, 51 petrol stations across the state have run dry, 164 without diesel, but fuel still being bought in bulk. This at a Western Sydney server.
If demand management procedures are required, that might be rationing, but firmly of the belief that it should be a nationally consistent approach.
Petrol thieves in Victoria targeting parked cars, prizing open fuel caps, siphoning tanks.
A little over a week ago, a lot of videos were being posted online of Cuba being in a total blackout, a nationwide blackout.
Now at Havana, Cuba, where the power is out across the entire island, according to local officials there. Cuba is under a U.S. energy blockade. It has not had any oil shipments in 3 months.
The Bible does have a lot to say about these types of things happening in the future. In Revelation, we know that there will be famines, food will cost a day's wages, there will be scarcity, lack, and also systems of the world trying to take absolute control at all costs.
I tell you a story about a refinery in Rajasthan, India, on April 20th, just 1 day before Prime Minister Modi was supposed to inaugurate it, an explosion ripped through the very heart of this refinery. It happened in the crude distillation unit, literally the most important part of the refinery. And said there might have been a hydrocarbon leak that caused the explosion, maybe. They're not sure. Maybe that's exactly what it was. Maybe it wasn't, but if you stop there, then of course you're missing the bigger story, which is why are so many oil refineries suddenly exploding around the world? I mean, here at Redacted, we don't believe in coincidences at all, just like the 15 NASA scientists, anti-gravity researchers, UFO gatekeepers who are all now missing or dead, suicided or murdered in the past few months. Something is not adding up. So because Rajasthan, India, their plant was not alone, not even close. In just the span of a few weeks since Israel's war with Iran broke out, refinery and oil site fires have erupted across multiple countries, almost too many to capture and count. Texas, Australia, India, Mexico, Ecuador, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, Russia. Now, some were accidents, to be sure, or at least were told, maybe to save face. Some were verifiably proven attacks. Some are still unresolved, meaning more attacks were, more attacks might have been more attacks or more accidents, we don't exactly know. But all of them have one thing in common. These are the places that turn crude oil into the fuel that keeps us alive and keeps food flowing, that keeps us from slipping into famine, and all of them have this in common. Most people have been focused right now on the tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, of course, carrying the oil and natural gas to destinations all around the world. But what if you take that out of the equation and you neutralize the refineries at the start where the raw crude becomes diesel for trucks, where the raw fuel becomes jet fuel for airplanes and becomes gasoline for millions of people and petrol? Then the tankers are an ancillary part of the story going through the Strait of Hormuz. But let's go a layer deeper here and look at more of these. Let's look at more of these suspicious explosions. Easy for me to say. Here's Saudi Arabia. The Ras Tanura oil refinery was hit by drone strikes and is the kingdom's largest refinery. It shut down after the attacks, after this devastation, and as a precaution so it wouldn't spread. Then you have Kuwait here on your screen, closest part of the Mina Al Ahmadi refinery. And then here on your screen right now is the UAE, the Ruwais refinery. That was hit and shut down as well on April 8th. Iran's own Lavan refinery was struck in what Iranian authorities themselves called an enemy attack. And then, of course, here's Russia. Take a look at this. Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine has been pounding refinery infrastructure openly and repeatedly, hitting 4 sites like Norsy, the Novoultnevsk, plant. Those are two sites that I can pronounce. The other two I'm not going to even try to pronounce because it's like a whole bunch of consonants just shoved together. I don't even think there's a vowel in here. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Novokubayevsk. Anyway.
That's not for us.
That's not for me.
That's not for our accents to try.
I don't have that ability. Talps. I think I could pronounce that one. So Talps is the number 4 that was attacked in Russia. These attacks were, by the way, carried out by the British. Redacted has learned through our own sources that the UK is providing targeting, telemetry data, as well as munitions to carry out these attacks against Russian oil infrastructure. It's not Ukraine. This was the UK. And it's a war aimed straight at the energy system. But then, what about all of the attacks outside of like a direct war zone? Ukraine, Russia, Iran, UAE, and the Middle East. Port Arthur, Texas. A major explosion, refinery there. Now, Iranian Republican Guard channels have taken credit for this, said it was sabotage by Iran. We don't have any proof of that, but that's what some Iranian-backed or IRGC-backed channels have said. It was sabotage carried out by them. Who knows? Tit for tat, perhaps? Then here's Australia. The Geelong plant. This was a big one, caused widespread panic across the country, a blaze of one of 2 operating refineries in the country, knocking out production down and forcing Canberra to scramble for supply. 10% of all of the supply flowed through here. And then, of course, you saw the news announce in Australia that many of these petrol stations had run out of gas. We showed you video of the bags or tags hanging over all of those gas pumps saying, sorry, we're out, we have nothing. Then just days ago in Romania, the CET Vest power plant exploded. That's Romania. And then just 2 days after Romania, Erbil, Iraq went up in flames. So here is Iraq. And the Erbil refinery going up in flames. And then if that's not enough, we go to Mexico, Dos Bocas in Mexico. Massive fire erupts there, the Mexican state-run petroleum refinery. And then let's not stop there. Let's go to Ecuador. Right after that, another massive fire at the Esmeraldas refinery, also up in smoke. So, and by the way, this is about a quarter of all of them that I'm showing you here. Rajasthan, India, just before the ribbon cutting time, and then Esmeralda in Ecuador, like these are not proven attacks. We don't know conclusively that they are. Some look like leaks, and of course, if they're meant to look like a sabotage or a leak, then how are you ever going to know that it was carried out with sabotage? Some look like old-fashioned industrial breakdowns, but we can't be sure. Like the Rajasthan one is a brand new freaking refinery. It was about to have a ribbon cutting ceremony. So that's not old industrial breaking down. We can't be sure what's going on here, but this is happening when the entire global system is already stretched to its limits. Jet fuel shortages, airliners canceling flights left and right. Lufthansa announcing this week that they are canceling thousands of flights because of no fuel, no jet fuel. This is why the story matters, because according to data that was just released, the current Iran war shock is different from older oil crises because it's not just hitting crude oil. It's hitting crude, it's hitting gas, it's hitting refined fuel, and it's hitting fertilizer all at the same time. Of course, it's also hitting helium if you need those things to make silicon and make a place to go. But just on the fuel and energy piece of it, it's hitting all of those things simultaneously. It's an impending disaster. It's already happening. Professor Robert Pape, who we had on our show on Monday, said that this disaster is accelerating. Watch. We're about 2 days away now from your sort of prediction. Anything you want to change in your prediction or maybe accelerate it?
We're ahead of schedule. So just 4 or 5 days after I made that prediction, and by the way, there's a much longer paper on the Substack that really goes into it. Of course, you can't do that in a tweet. That jet fuel. We're running about a month. It's about a month before we're going to be out of jet fuel in Europe. And you're already seeing that airliners are already cutting back.
Yeah, that was Monday. Now the shortages have accelerated. Major airlines canceling thousands of flights.
Breaking news to bring you now. This is from the IEA chief, the International Energy Agency chief, Fatih Birol, saying that Europe has maybe 6 weeks or so of jet fuel left.
And here in graph today, here are today's numbers of jet fuel supplies that are plummeting, falling off a cliff. Look at the right side of your screen there. So in green is Southeast Asia. You have it broken down by regions, right? Northwest European zone, the Mediterranean zone, the Sea and Black Sea, and you have, Oceania, you have the Middle East and Gulf regions, all of them plummeting right now with their supplies of jet fuel available. And here's PAPE's latest assessment this morning. History is clear. Once shortages begin, the system doesn't stabilize. It tightens, production slows, supply chains break, governments intervene. This is how economic shocks turn into contractions. Excuse me, that was from last night. So history is clear here. Once shortages begin, he said, the system doesn't stabilize, it then tightens up. And that's where you see all of these contractions across the region. Asia's refineries are now cutting runs sharply. Analysts say diesel jet fuel output is dropping by at least 1 million barrels per day, maybe more. So when a refinery catches fire right now, it doesn't happen inside like a stable market that can handle it. It happens inside a market that's already running on empty. And then there's Russia with its direct output to Europe. We already saw, of course, when the United States blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So add on top of that, the refinery capacity being limited now in Russia thanks to the British attacks on their refineries. And then, of course, you have the fire that's, think about, like, we care so much about paper frickin' straws. But the fire, the air quality is so bad at these refinery fires. They're warning residents about benzene, xylene, soot. Breathing this air is absolutely horrible. So earlier this month, we learned that British attacks on Russia had knocked out around a fifth of Russia's export capacity. That means Europe specifically getting hammered. And that peaked around 40% in March. So these fires are absolutely part of a deliberate campaign to help usher in Agenda 2030, in my opinion, a campaign of depopulation control. This will make COVID look like child's play. And this energy crisis is going to last a long time. This morning, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Karachi said that the Strait of Hormuz will remain blocked until $100 billion in frozen Iranian assets are released. That's not going to happen because that money's already gone. They already spent that money. They already took that money and ran with it. So that's not going to happen. So then what? The strait remains closed. And then about 3 hours ago, you had Israel's Defense Minister Katz clearly reading from something that like Netanyahu had written while he was on the toilet, basically telling him what to say, that Israel is prepared to renew the war against Iran, and it's just waiting on a U.S. green light. And then, of course, today you had J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio being rushed to the White House in what people were describing, or the press, the Mockingbird media was describing as an urgent meeting because Netanyahu wants his war back. So here we go. And by the way, Iran published this. You just think about the oil and infrastructure. They also published this today. This is the internet, which runs right through there. 97% of global internet traffic rides on these undersea cables that go through there. I mean, we're talking AI, banking, everything. And so why are they publishing that? Why is Iran showing us that? Well, because if they cut one of these freaking cables, it could be absolutely devastating. If they cut all of them, imagine what would happen as a result of that.
President Trump couldn't tweet.
Right, he wouldn't be able to publish on Truth Social. So
I mean,
let us know your thoughts on that.
Whose idea was it to put like all of these critical global structures in one contentious area?
The hot spot.
Yeah, who thought that up?
Like, hey, let's put it right off the coast of Yemen. And let's put it like all of this infrastructure right there next to where they've had wars nonstop since the 1940s. Let's do that.
Right.
All this critical infrastructure.
And while we're at it, critical helium, fertilizer, oil. Is there anything else that comes out of there that we need? Like, is that where all the bees live?
Yeah.
All the bees live there too?
But you got to wonder. I mean, this is why the United States is kind of sitting fine at the moment. I mean, not for Americans, but like for the United States government, which can then try to reposition itself away from the Saudi Arabian petrodollar into a North American, United States-backed U.S. dollar, which is hemorrhaging, of course. We are self-sustained with our own energy supply in the United States. We're forcing these countries now to come to us to get liquefied natural gas. Gasoline. All of these tankers are pulling into the Gulf of America and getting all of this stuff. So it's great.
On the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This, and this, or this, and this. Do we want a symbol of Muslim conquest? Or do we want the third temple? A place of connection and service to the Almighty God, creator of the universe. So this is the question facing the people of Israel. Do we want to be a nation like any other nation? Or do we want to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation? I'm going to come back to this question in just a little bit, but first I'm going to give you some relevant news and current events, and then I'm going to boil it all down and see if we can get some clarity on this. Let's take a look at this recent survey from Tamrur Politographia. This is a survey conducted in March of 2026 by Professors Sivan Hirschhofler and Professor Gilad Hirschberger regarding the attitudes of Israeli Jews towards the Temple Mount. I think it's fair to say that this survey was done by a left-wing organization, so if anything, the results are likely skewed in that direction, and the numbers are actually better, but it's still interesting. So let's get right to it. According to the survey, the number of Israeli Jews who support the construction of a temple on the Temple Mount right now is 33%, 1/3. Now that doesn't mean that 2/3 are opposed, because they don't really say how many, undecided people were in the middle. Okay. Jewish prayer. 50% say that any Jew who wishes to pray on the Temple Mount should be allowed to pray. Some people were on the fence, and only about 34% support restricting Jewish access to the Temple Mount. However, when asked whether they support the police actually stopping Jews from praying, only 20% said yes, that they want to stop them. 46% of the Jewish public support strengthening Israeli control over the Temple Mount, even if this provokes riots among the Arabs. And 39% support this even at the cost of harming peace with Jordan. So as you can see, that people are really divided about this issue. And you can see this spilling over into Israeli politics, of course. In my last video, I talked about the National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. If you missed it, be sure you go check out that one after you finish this one. Here's a short clip from that.
והנה, סוף סוף בא בן אדם שבאמת בפועל משנה את העוול הנורא שהיה פה, שלא יכולנו להתפלל, ואפשר להתפלל ולהשתחוות ולשיר, ולהרגיש את הקדושה של המקום.
Anyone who knows me knows that I am very distrusting of politicians. But you have to give credit where credit's due. The situation on the Temple Mount has improved under Ben-Gvir. It didn't start with him, and there's a lot more that needs to be done, but it has improved. There are actually people who want to get Ben-Gvir fired over this, and some other issues. There was a hearing about removing Ben-Gvir before the Israeli High Court on April 15th. Here are some pictures from the outside of the courthouse. You can also see here people with temple flags who came out in support of Ben-Gvir. If you want your own temple flag, I have my own exclusive design. You can get it in my store. I have a lot of other cool stuff over there too, so be sure you go check that out. So I want to show you a clip from this hearing before the High Court. This is very strong words by attorney David Petter, who is arguing on behalf of Ben-Gvir.
כן, התשובה היא כן רבתי. השר בן גביר שינה את המצב בהר הבית. שינה גם שינה. למה צריך לפחד לומר זאת? בשביל זה הוא נבחר. ומי שהיה אמור לרדת בפיג'מה באמצע הלילה להגן על זכויות יהודים בהר הבית זה בית המשפט הנכבד הזה. אלא שבענייננו מי שהגן על זכויות אדם במדינת ישראל זה נבחר ציבור. הוא הגן על זכויות יהודים.
So just to show you the depth of the divide here, I'm going to show you another video from last week by another elected member of the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament. This is Samir bin Said. Samir is not very happy about Jews praying on the Temple Mount. So let's hear what he has to say.
المتطرف الذين البارحة اقتحموا المسجد الأقصى وأقاموا صلوات تلمودية، نقول لهم جميعا أن المسجد الأقصى كله 144 دنما كلها ملك وحق خاص وحصري للمسلمين، لا أحد يشاركنا في هذا الحق على الإطلاق.
Yeah. So Samir, I think you're going to be very disappointed with what's about to happen, because the people of Israel have a real choice to make. What kind of nation do we want to be? What kind of nation does Hashem want us to be? You know, the people of Israel are not a normal people. When we stood at Mount Sinai, we became an eternal people. We entered into a covenant with the creator of the universe. So no matter how much we may want to run from that awesome responsibility, we cannot escape it, for better or for worse. We didn't come out of Egypt just to go back to Egypt. We didn't come back to our land just to do whatever silly nonsense. We came here to build the Mikdash, the temple, to keep the Torah. We came here to fulfill our holy purpose, to be a light to the whole world as servants of Almighty God. I hope that we can make this choice soon, because things are changing and things must change. And I'm here to keep you updated, so be sure you watch these videos, subscribe, and I will see you in the next update. There's some really interesting things that are about to happen.